right? And I'm like, I was talking to him. I'm like, hey, I don't know what I do anymore. I own a mortgage company. I do mortgages for people. I do radio. I do podcasts and this. He goes, you don't see it, do you? And I go, no. It's much easier for me to connect with somebody and tell them what they need to hear than for me. And he goes, you help people tell their story across multiple mediums. I was like, oh, that's a good way to put it.
Well,
yeah. Because I have to tell their story to get them alone. I have to tell them a story to on the radio. So.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of hands down the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as you head over to YouTube and you can smash that bell down below, ding, 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 and you can subscribe to our channel. And that way you're connected to all great things audacious related. Now, we'll be talking about being of service to others on this edition of the podcast. And former Navy vet and current radio and podcast host Ed Parcaut joins us here on the Audacious Living Podcast to talk about his personal life journey, as well as to share a little bit about what service looks like in his own life. It was former heavyweight boxer Muhammad Ali who once said, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And I love this quote because it really speaks to the personal obligation we all have to one another for our time here on this planet. I heard a speaker once say that, the end of all of our knowledge is service to others. And again, it's about our acquired knowledge and what we do with that. And so those knowledge and the insights and the lessons learned aren't meant to stay with us. They are to be shared with others. And whether you do so as a volunteer at a local food bank, or maybe you're a doctor or a firefighter or social worker as part of your profession, being of service is a major key to having true success in life. We'll be talking about all that and so much more on this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Ed Parcaut. Enjoy. Hey, Ed, how's it going? Thank you for joining me here on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
I know you said you're usually on the other side of the microphone typically, but we're gonna try something different this time because you obviously you're a radio host and a podcast yourself.
Yeah, I do a few things. I stay busy. Yeah.
Yes, busy is a key. So we'll talk about the few things that you do. I know certainly real estate is a big part of your world, and as well as your podcast, helping the brave is another aspect of what you do. But for me, I'm always interested in sort of call them the origin stories, if you will, and kind of how people got to where they got to. And so maybe we kind of go back there, particularly in your world, in your real estate work, to talk about how you landed in that direction.
Well, see, you said origin, so I almost went, well, my home planet just got destroyed. And right. Yeah. That's first thing I was thinking when you were saying that. But so my background, so I'll go a little bit further than that if you're okay. And then I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Basically, I was born in California, in Burlingame, California, which is where the San Francisco airport is, in that area. I don't remember it because I was a kid. And then we went back and forth between Colorado and California.
Okay.
So my dad died of hairy cell leukemia when I was 12 in California. And that's from the Vietnam War and all the Agent Orange that they used. And so I got stuck in a little town called Turlock, went to high school and other schools during that period of time. And then when I got done, I'm like, I want to get out of here. because my grandparents owned a dairy.
Right.
I worked on it on the weekends and all summer, hauled hay, did all that, had big shoulders from doing all that hauling the hay and stuff and everything. But I'm like, this is not a life for me. So I joined the Navy to be, go see the world. I joined as a corpsman, which is a medic, if you don't know. It's for people who don't know. And so I joined it, got stationed down at Camp Pendleton, which is right outside of San Diego at Oceanside at the hospital there. And then it was time for me to leave to go to the next thing. So basically it says you're going to see the world. Well, my next duty station was I had a choice of a ship or I could go to a specialty school, and I went to physical therapy and then got stationed back at Camp Pendleton. So I got to see San Diego my whole time, which was no complaint on my end because it was a beautiful place and had a great time down there. Ended up getting my bachelor's while I was in and was working on my master's and got out. And so I had, not many people have a bachelor's and master's, getting out of the Navy as a corpsman. Right. So I fell in kind of my background when I first got in the military. So we're talking 80s. All right. Long time ago. Right. Computers used floppy disks back then.
Yes, they did. I remember them.
Right. The first hard drive, 10 megabytes. Oh my God. We were so happy. And now you can't even get one program on, a little part of a program on 10 megabytes.
That's right.
And so they utilized me in the service for that when I first got there. And then when I got out, that was my choice. I was like, I had two choices. I was looking at the real estate industry. I kind of dabbled in that. And it was then 90, 91. And that's when the market fell, another time of recession. Right. So I got in the computer industry, sold computers back in the day before you could customize them. I actually created them and then sold it through the exchange system for the military. Excuse me here.
Gotcha. No worries.
I'm used to asking all the questions and the other person talks. So now I'm on the other side. And so I did that. And then while I was doing that, it just got to a point where this thing I'd set up, my first mistake in business was taking a contract to a small company and not understanding that. Right. And I realized that. And so I ended up falling in the mortgage industry. My neighbor owned a mortgage company. And I was like, I'll try that. And I had my background in marketing, which was, in my bachelor's and master's in marketing and international business. So I said, I'll do the marketing. And I created postcards and other stuff. And I was one of the first direct mail people back in the day. Right. And then that's how it all started for me in the mortgage industry. So.
It's interesting. Well, actually, I want to go back. Why the Navy, Ed? What made you? I mean, you could have gone anywhere at that point. The world is your oyster. Why the Navy?
Didn't have, my dad was in the Air Force. My uncle was in the Air Force.
Right.
Then let's see, my stepdad was in the Marine. Okay. And I was like, and what people don't realize, and I didn't realize at the time, the Marine Corps is a department of the Navy. So you're really part of the Navy. They're all connected. Air Force and Army have joint bases together. I just wasn't, it was the first thing I went to, and it was, it just happened to work out. They were at my school. I was talking to them. They said I could be a corpsman. I could go delayed in. It was, work. Nobody else would give me the same thing. So they did at the time. Right. Because we asked that same question on my other podcast called Helping the Brave. Why'd you pick that service?
Right. Right.
And for me, it just worked out. Because I tell my son, when he went to join, he wanted to be a medic. And he saw the Air Force. They wouldn't guarantee him anything. And then we went to the Army. They on the spot would guarantee what he wanted. He went airborne. And he's like, should I check out the Navy? I'm like, no, you will not be lucky like me and not be on a ship. So that was the one thing. It's like, I was the only guy I know that got in the Navy and never been on a ship.
There you go. No one would believe you, right?
No, but I made sure I didn't, because when they asked me what specialty school I wanted to go to, before I went, I don't know if I said it, but I said, what was not on a ship? And they said physical therapy. And that's why I picked that one. So.
Guy, good strategy. So going into service, that was kind of, it wasn't like a long-term plan or something you thought of or planned. It just kind of happened. Is that really what you're saying?
No, I wanted to be in the medical field, but I didn't know if I because my uncle was a chiropractor. I knew some other people who were doctors and nurses, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, I was like, as a corpsman, I get to try it out. I get to do certain things and see if I want to spend all that time in school. Right. I wasn't the greatest student. I mean, get me wrong. I don't want to say I cheated, but let's put it this way. I got A's and B's and never studied. So what do you want to do? Gotcha. So I was one of those kids that I could just see it and then I knew it, kind of thing. So, so I just got lucky. So for me, so I did that. And that's when I realized I liked patient care, but it was at the time in the Navy when they started cutting and they were like, you're doing more with less each year. And I'm like, this is not what I really want to do. Right. Plus, being in the Navy, you learn that time and rank is how you move up. And that's not who I am. I'm all about sales. I'm all about what I produce, I get, that whole stay, what'd you go hunt and you get to eat kind of thing. And basically,
Gotcha.
I like that whole thing. I like that part of it. And sometimes you don't like that part, but that's what you're good at. So.
Gotcha. And it's important to be able to recognize that, because that's, the whole thing about knowing what your strengths are, right? And so recognizing what you're good at and pointing in that direction is what you're talking about.
Correct. You need to find that out. And so how I found out my strength was in between 92 and then I got in the mortgage industry, and then I got out of it a year later because the whole market went destroyed, kind of what they're doing to us right now.
Right.
I won't get into that. Yeah. Sorry. Whoever's administration this is, they're taking us in the 70s and we won't go there. Right. But the issue was, what was I talking about? Oh yeah. So I ended up working for a medical insurance company, and it was I don't know if it was in Thousand Oaks in the LA area. Okay. And I don't know if it was Blue Cross or Blue Shield. I think it was Blue Shield. I was in the small business department, and I would call small businesses about setting up their insurance. And so after 6 months of calling, I started listening to what people were saying on the phone, meaning the tones and inflections in their voice, what they would actually say and what you could key out of the conversation. And I got really good at it. And someone says I have a good voice. I don't know if I do, but it has worked for me on the telephone and on other places. Right. Sure. And my wife told me the other day, because we were talking about it, and she's like, yeah, when you called, so it's a long story, and I'll get into that later, but basically I called her where she worked. I needed some help from her. And the lady said, hey, there's some guy on here with a really nice voice, and had her to the phone. Right. And she finally told me that. I was like, oh, okay, that works for me. Nice. So I sold in the mortgage industry. I sold by the phone for 18 years.
Okay. Wow.
Right. And my ratio of when I'd sent, this is back in the day before we had all the stuff we have now, like everything's electronic and this and that. You'd actually have to send out FedEx packages to people, and they would send it back.
Yes.
And I was at a 89% return ratio.
That's pretty good. That's really good.
When most people are at like 40. So, and they were like, and out of that 89, I would close 98% of them.
Wow.
And what the deal was I would make sure they wanted it before I sent it to them. Right. I would take it. I would use all the closes, take it away from them, close, make sure they didn't, not to manipulate them, but make sure it's what they wanted. I don't want to work with that someone said, well, I'm an amazing salesperson, I can sell ice to Eskimos. Well, why would you want to do that?
Right.
Right. They have enough ice already. That's just ridiculous.
That's right.
I hated that saying. But
I love the point around selling people what they want, because there's some key skills required. You got to listen, you got to understand, and some empathy, and those are all key aspects to sell. Again, and I'll use that the example, the ice Eskimo kind of thing, and I think it's a really good one. Like, why would you if they don't need it, right? And so oftentimes people are so used to be bombarded and inundated with things they don't need because the guy was trying to get the numbers of how much packages he sent out, as an example.
Well, I was just letting you know how good I was at sending that out. I wasn't saying I was just no. I mean, that was back in the day when you didn't have. I mean, we were call centers before they were call centers. We were one of the ones that created it. I was the one who created direct mail that people stole from. Right? I would come up with a new department, and knew this, or we get in trouble, and I make changes. And next thing you know, everybody's doing the same thing I'm doing, and that would just make me change stuff. And so and that's why I love sales, because I like connecting with people, talking to people. I like what I do best, which is to talk to somebody.
Right.
Paperwork, I'm horrible at it. I have staff for that. I do decent at paying the bills of the company, but I have other people doing that, because not that I'm bad at it, but if I have money in the account, what do we need to get today? Kind of thing. Right. It's not my job. My wife's much better at that kind of stuff. I'm good at talking to people, and that's why I like doing all the stuff I do, the radio shows, the podcasts. Steve Sims, who we got connected through with Christy. I was talking to him in one of his speakeasy. He wanted us all to say, tell me what you do.
Yep.
Right. And I'm like, I was talking to him. I'm like, hey, I don't know what I do anymore. I own a mortgage company. I do mortgages for people. I do radio. I do podcasts and this. He goes, you don't see it, do you? And I go, no. It's much easier for me to connect with somebody and tell them what they need to hear than for me. And he goes, you help people tell their story across multiple mediums. I was like, oh, that's a good way to put it.
Well,
because I have to tell their story to get them a loan. I have to tell them a story to on the radio. So
True. No, and it makes sense. It's so funny how sometimes the outside perspective helps give you, all the clarity in the world, because we can't see what we have within ourselves. So hearing that example, I think is a perfect illustration of it, right?
Right. Well,
Perfect.
and we're worried to be fake these days, right? I mean, we're not, you and I are not the youngest, but we've been around when you've seen the stuff that has happened, and we're more worried that we're going to be like somebody else, when we're in reality, we're the most honest and most genuine people there are, but we're worried about that other thing. And so I think that comes into play a lot with us.
Yeah,
so.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense. I want to go back to coming out of service and sort of having to make a decision as to what's next. And I'm imagining, that's a big one for a lot of people coming out of service. Like, what does that what next look like? You said you got in a mortgage, but what was the timeline like, or what was the gap there? Did you need some time to figure it out? What did that look like for you?
Well, when you're married with a kid coming right when you're getting out of the service, you don't really have much time to play around. So,
understood.
Yeah. So my first son was born. I got out like a few days prior to me getting out. So it was like right at the end of my service when he was getting born. And it was like, and at that point I had my bachelor's, I was starting to work on my master's, and I was like, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I know it might be in the real estate industry. So I got my real estate license. And the joke about California,
how did you know? How did you know it was real estate? That's the key. That's what I wanted to get into. How did you know?
You don't know. You don't know. You got to try things. It's about being uncomfortable in life. You have to do things that you're not comfortable with. I mean, how long? If you go back to my original radio show in August of 2018.
Yep.
I sucked. I was horrible. It was live. It was horrible. I'm not to say I'm much better today, but I'm much easier. I just talk. I don't care. What I mean by that is not caring is I don't care if you don't like what I have to say, because it's not going to affect me, meaning that not everybody's going to like what I say. Right. In the beginning, You didn't want to, upset somebody. Prime example. When you're dating somebody, right? You don't tell them everything that you care about because you're afraid you're going to lose them, right?
Right.
So when I've been divorced twice, and then I'm remarried now, and that's been 18 years, and she's the one, right? And so what I tell people is, you have to make a list of what you want in a person, right? And I mean ridiculous, and what you want, not what you don't want. And
right.
I had this huge list, and everybody said I wouldn't get it. My wife had the same huge list, and they said she wouldn't get it. But when somebody set us up on a blind date and it didn't work the first time, right? And then I ended up getting my daughter with special needs full time, and I reached out to her for some stuff, and we just started talking. And then we were talking at night because we were just friends, and we tried the blind date. It didn't work. And you said everything. We didn't care at that point, right? Well, then it happened. We actually fell for each other. And it's at the point where we knew everything about each other because you told the truth. So that's the biggest problem, is you can't hold it back. You just have to tell people. You'll bring the right people to you if you are who you are, right? Don't be fake. Be who you are. The people that don't like you won't come to you, and you're not successful until you have haters. You're not, right? You have to have haters in order to be successful. And that was Brad Lee on one of Steve's things. He said that, and I started looking at it. I was like, yeah. And then last year at Traffic and Conversion, where are you located?
Toronto, Canada.
Okay. All right. So in San Diego here, there's this thing called Traffic and Conversion. And I went down there, and Steve Sims was there and a few other people. And I parked my big white truck. I have a Ford F-250 because I own a cabin in 32 acres and I can't drive. It's hard to drive an Audi pulling a trailer. Right. But it's funny, as people gave me crap about my Audi, but then my truck's more expensive than my Audi. And it has my license plate in front. They would take pictures every day, flipping me off and everything else, right? So I took all those pictures and posted on Facebook and said, when you have haters like this, you got to be really successful.
Yeah, you've done well. Yeah. It's true, but it is true. I mean, they keep you in check, and it's important to have that. And I very much like the idea of not knowing, right? You just go out there and give it a shot, because that's how we can tie it directly back to what we talk about here, and taking risks and taking chances. That's what life is. Yeah. That's what true life is. So you got in the mortgage industry. Your buddy helped you get there, and you loved it. Is that
I love numbers, right? Numbers are for me. And what's nice about the mortgage industry is I help people, I say build personal wealth through home ownership. And that's what I do. I mean, the reason I started the radio show is because of the downturn from 2008. We had a lot of people who saw their parents lose their house and didn't get another house. And so all these youngsters grew up in that period after that and thought, I'm never going to own a home because I saw what it did to my parents. When in reality, it says you need to own a home because that's where most people build their wealth. Most people don't have a 401k or 403b or even an IRA. But if you own a home, you're building personal wealth that will change you, your family, and on. So you need to own real estate. And so you ask why real estate? And it's like, it just happened for me. It's one of those things that I don't know what I'm going to do, but I put out there certain things. Prime example, Eds podcast that I do. I didn't really know how successful it was going to be, but it's about our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats, right? That's important. You have to make these mistakes and learn from them and keep going forward. Most people, and I didn't realize how much I hated making those mistakes until Steve was like, you hate making mistakes, dude. You're prior military, prior medic. When you made a mistake, someone died. I didn't want to tell him not really, because I worked in physical therapy. It didn't really work out that way, but it sounded good. And
I get it. Right.
And I could see it. I don't have a problem with any of my staff or other people making mistakes as long as they learn from it. But for me, I also tell them, you don't make the same mistake again. Right. That's insanity. We already know that. So you learn from it and you move on. Let's not make that again. Let's put it in a book, and that's the other thing for the military, the standard operating procedures. You got to have a book of how something happens in case that person's not there, who can step in and take over.
Gotcha.
And that, there's just so much I learned from the military that I use in business, but also, I love being uncomfortable now. Right. I was telling Steve the other day, does anybody do a little course on how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable? And he's like, I think someone stated it, but no one's ever done anything on it. And I think it's something that people need to be okay with. And a lot of people hate public speaking, so they'll never do it. But the reason you do public speaking is so you get good at it.
Yeah, better, exactly.
Or not good at it, but you just did it, right?
Yeah, but that's it, right? And what happens oftentimes, Ed, is we don't like to do something because we've never done it, but then when we do, we're like, oh yeah, I did do it, and you almost build up these little milestones. Well, I did this, so then I can do it again, or I spoke to 10 people, and I can speak to 20 people or 50 people. Like you can build on that and develop, and that's the key in challenging yourself. How long did it take you to learn that lesson, Ed?
I don't know. How old am I? I think I'm still learning that lesson. And because it's everything. I mean, I hadn't been on stage in 15 years, and Steve had me on one of the speakeasy stage a while back, just a quick 10-minute. We did this. I don't know if you've ever been in those things, but a speakeasy speaks he's doing now.
Yep.
And I can talk for hours about real estate and mortgages and why we're not going to have a bubble and why the birth rates cause this. And I can just on a dime. All right. Well, the one thing I'm good at is sales and that kind of stuff. Well, I hadn't spoken about sales. I haven't spoken about certain things like that for years.
Right.
And so that was uncomfortable to me. And that's what I wanted. Everybody's like, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, this, because this is not what I normally talk about. I don't want to talk about what I normally talk about because that's too easy for me. So, I didn't do amazing. I did all right. Most people really liked it. And
sure.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a basketball executive with a pro basketball league, and I'm a podcaster as well.
Okay. So you don't know about sales then?
A little bit.
Oh, no. The thing is everybody sells, right? You do.
Yes,
Whether you tell your kid not to run across the street, whether you go in for a job interview, or whether you go in for your job next advancement or a pay raise, whatever, you have to sell yourself, right? So everybody does sales to a certain thing. Back in my industry, for as long as I've been in sales, one of the things people said was, people don't buy from you because they just don't know. That's what all the gurus said, right? If you go back to Zig Ziglar,
right.
Tom Hopkins, all those guys, they'll say that. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing, right? What does that mean? And so at that event, I came up with an acronym, and it was like knowledge needed to overcome waiting, right? And that's what people don't know. Yeah, it works out. Don't worry, I figured that out. I saw you there counting it,
okay.
Doing the nut letters. Knowledge needed to overcome waiting, right? Yeah, there's an extra 2 in there, but the only way it worked.
All right. Problem. I could take it.
You can add those little extra things. And it was funny because I had some people come up to me afterwards, been in sales forever. He goes, man, I never heard that before. I'm like, yeah, well, it just came to me one day when I'm trying to figure out how to explain what you need, why people don't buy. People buy for 2 reasons, right? Or I should say, make a decision for 2 reasons, either out of pain or pleasure. Most of the time it's pain. That's it, right? They wait till they have to make that decision, and then they do it. And so I was trying to explain that through that talk. That's why you just haven't given them reason to not wait any longer. And you have to get to them and help them figure that out so you can get them past that point. And then, the other stuff is overcoming the objections, the cry for knowledge.
Sure.
There's just a lot of stuff I'm coming up with now that I'm trying to do differently, right? Because I know my industry, but what can I do in other stuff, right? I've been doing my industry for 25 years. And, it's on, I don't have to do anything. I mean, I do, but you know what I mean? It's like, hey, talk to this person. I'll come over, sign right here. Right. It's like, it's
right. I got it.
And no, this doesn't work for you, or this doesn't work for you. When I talk to somebody, I go through and I make sure it's right for them, and make sure that it's going to work, and not just because we create one of the largest debts in someone's life. So we have a professional responsibility to help them manage that debt, where a lot of companies online or whatever, you're a number. What do you want to be, a number? Do you want somebody there to help you along the way? I mean, if you go back to like Charles Schwab, right? That company, they were like, we're going to be the discount person for financial planner. Now that they took over the market, guess what they are? Oh, we have people now to help you. That's right. They went complete opposite way.
That's right. You're a number. So now you become a number.
Now, you are a number. Now you're an important number to us. So we want to keep you. Right. And that's, you just have to look at things. I don't know where we're going with this, but I always get off in tangents. Sorry.
No, this is great, because I think really what it does, it speaks to, and look, first of all, this is what life is. Life is, you accept what comes your way and you go with it. But piece I want to touch on is there seems to be a real strong commitment to helping others, especially getting home ownership and first time. Where did that come from for you, that desire to get people to a better place?
The flag, patriotic, we're all basically I joined the Navy to help, I signed on the dotted line to protect this country. And then I'm here to help people. I just enjoy, and that's how it all started, was helping people. I mean, it's been that way. I've been helped along the way from people throughout my life that've gotten me further in life. So I see that by giving, you get, right? Basically, if you give out to people, you get back. And some people think it's a selfish thing, right? It can be, but basically you have to help people to get to where you want to get to in life. And that's why I like serving. That's why I do all the different podcasts, Helping the Brave, which is helping vets once you take the uniform off. Because the transition you brought up about how did I know? Well, for me, it was different. I was already working on my degrees, and I knew I was not going to be in the Navy forever. It was a plan to utilize it for my future. But some people go in to say they're going to be in for 20 years. I went in going, I can't do this for 20 years because that guy that's dumber than me is telling me what to do. And that just doesn't work for me because he's been here longer. Right.
That's right. He's took up space longer than you have. And all of a sudden he's got the ranks. I get it. No,
that's why I don't like government stuff, because that's the same thing in government stuff.
Right. Okay. Got you. So you touched on Helping the Brave. And again, I think it's a fabulous podcast. And I very, very much appreciate the focus, right? You're very clear as to who you want to talk to and why you want to do it. And what, what you're looking to do with, in terms of offer. Sort of talk about sort of the birth of that, the impetus of that, and what got you to where you are now.
Well, I mean, I think we all need to figure out who our market, if you're going to sell something, you need to know who your target market is. You need to know who you're trying to get to. You need to know who you're trying to talk to. For me, if you go back, the radio show was to help educate people to buy homes. Right. And I don't care if they use me or not, but it was all about getting that education out there. And that's working. And that's worked a lot in our area. Edison was just helping business owners and people understand, hey, you're going to make mistakes. That's okay. Learn from them, move on. And so I'm just going to, twice a month, we have someone talk about what they've been through. And then twice a month, someone about how they can help so people don't go through that same thing. Something totally different. Helping the Brave was a little different. I came up with that domain like 2 years before I used it. Okay. And I come up with a lot of stuff like that. It's like, that's a great thing. I don't know how I'm going to use it yet, but I'll use it. And what happened was, in my industry, people take advantage of people. And whether it's family prying on other family, selling them loans, or really, not really. I don't want to come off wrong on this, but veterans are very trusting. And people take advantage of that. A lot of the people that you see on TV who have those ads, they're not doing the best thing for the veteran, even though they say they are. They're not. You have to look at a lot of these companies charge, in order to be on TV, it costs a lot of money for that marketing. Well, how do they get that back? Well, they charge a lot. And I don't want to get sued, but basically you have to look at the fine print and see how many points are changing. So there was a organization who was like, oh, we help heroes get into homes and we give money back with this, and this. It was all just I don't want to say a con, but basically to get you to utilize certain people and funnel those people through a group of people just so that they had business. And I was like, that's bullshit. We can create the same thing. And then I searched and I was looking for names, heroes, whatever. I'm like, we're not heroes, we're brave. And then helping the brave was available. But then I'm like, I really don't want to do that. I want to use it for something else. And what happened was I was doing the lives for a lot of other stuff. And then I was like, helping the brave, that, and I was dealing with a lot of veterans all of a sudden, because I'm in Northern California, right? We don't have bases here anymore. More vets in Southern California, right, than up here. There's vets up here, but it wasn't the same. Down there, I run into them everywhere. And so it's like, how do when I transitioned, there was no help getting out. And what you wanted to do, there was a 1 week course where you sat there, they filled out stuff, you filled out your disability, that kind of stuff, but it really didn't help. And I'm like, we need to put something together. And I got a bunch of people involved. And then now that we're down to just 2 hosts, because for me, it's just, I'll do it. I don't need anybody else, but it's nice to have other people. And we've had some people come through who want to help out, but life gets in the way. Right.
Sure.
So the whole goal is just to have people on, tell their transition story. And then also talk about, if they're having issues, and then have people talk about like PTSD, how they dealt with it. Had a gentleman on last week that I've known him for a couple of years, and last time I met him, which was a week ago, again, he was different, and then had him on helping the brave. And he talked about how he finally dealt with this PTSD, and it's changed. And he was, the crazy uncle, and now he's not the crazy uncle, and the difference in that life. And I was like, thanks so much for sharing that, because people need to hear this and help. And the biggest thing, it's like college, right? You're so connected to all your people, right? And especially in your different groups, and how, you lose it. And then in the military, you're connected to all these people. Then all of a sudden you're gone. When I got out, there was no, what Al Gore finally came and fixed this for us, where we have the internet. You don't know. That's a joke. He said he created it. Anyway, Al Gore said he created the internet.
He said he made the internet. No, I remember.
Anyway. So now there's so much you can be connected now after COVID. You're like Zoom, you have all these things you can do.
Sure.
And I'm like, we need to be connected so people can come back and because there's so many groups out there to help veterans, but people don't know about them. And one of the examples was, I found out, I'm a disabled vet. I'm a little bit, not a huge amount, but I found out in California, if you're 10% to 99%, your kids can go to college for free. You just have to pay for their room and board and books, right? If you're not 100%, your kids can go, and there's no income limit for them what they want to do. But no one ever heard about this. I didn't hear about it. I already sent 2 of my kids through, and then I hear about from this old guy. He's like, oh yeah, I sent all my kids. So you see this and this and this. And now, so that kind of stuff that people don't know about, I wanted to get out there for vets to understand that it's out there for their help.
Got you. It seems that, vets, is it safe to say they're a vulnerable group in that sense, in terms of not having access to information or aware of information? Is that?
They're not a vulnerable. It's just, there's a lot of services out there that they don't know about. And we want to make sure that they're aware of it. But like I said, we are trusting. So people sometimes take advantage of that trust outside when they're trying to sell us stuff. Right. And that's the one thing that I don't like about, because I was doing some advertising for a TV company, like, hey, we got a sponsorship for Memorial Day for you to sponsor this thing. And it's for veterans, blah, blah. I'm like, I can't do that. That's feeding off of that's just wrong. That's not what I'm going to do. Right. If I'm going to do something, I'll pay for it. And my name's not going to be anywhere on it. Right.
It's not self-serving, right? You're doing it for a bigger purpose. And that's really what you're talking about here. I think the work that you do, even just talking as you're describing it, I think it's phenomenal, because you are providing something to a group of people that sounds like they're totally unaware in most cases.
Well, there's a lot of groups there, but they don't talk to each other, like even for PTSD help, right? Then they go to the VA. The VA is overrun. It's a government organization. It's not, we'll just leave it at that. It's not always run the best. It doesn't always have everything. There's other organizations who are there for vets or to help them. And, there's a lot of stuff. Here's a pill. They don't want that. They want to resolve what it is, and there's other treatments, but they don't always know what these other treatments are. Right. And even, hey, I want a job. How do I get a job? We'll go to the Rosie Network. They have this, and they put on these job fairs. This is other company that helps you build your company as a veteran, that's out there. No one knows about those things. Right. Right. I mean, some people do, but not everybody. And I want them to be able to come through one place to be able to funnel that stuff and understand it. And if there's somebody else who's doing what we're doing, well, come on our show, tell us so you can be on it. It's not, I don't want to own it. It's not my information. It's to get that information out there.
I just love the fact that you're so willing to share. And tell me, why is it important us to share our stories? You sort of talked earlier about different individuals, and you referenced a gentleman that struggled with PTSD. And why is it so important to share our stories with one another?
Because when you share your stories, there's somebody else out there who's going to react to it and can learn from it. That's why. I mean, you never know who you're going to affect. You're going to affect somebody, and you just never know who you're going to affect. And that's why you need to share your stories. And I know a lot of us don't want to tell. Before I got on radio, nobody knew anything about me, right? They knew who I was, but they didn't know anything. Now I have nothing personal, right? Everything's out there. You know everything about me, right? That's okay. And it was funny because I fill in for a show that for this one guy who does a 2-hour show occasionally just to help out. Because again, uncomfortable. It's a talk show that you don't actually interview people. Right. You have to get people to call in. So it's a totally different thing. Right. Yep. And I brought up there how my wife was a water snob. And because she will only drink like filtered water, she won't do spring water. It tastes horrible. She could be in the desert dying of thirst and won't drink. It has to be filtered. And my neighbor's like, tell your wife not to be such a water snob. You never know who's listening and how you. And that's why I'm gonna. It's like it's a give back. That's I'm in Rotary. I'm in other stuff. It's about serving our community. And our radio show, Real Estate, and the name of the radio show is called Real Estate Jerky. We give you something to chew on. And so that way you'll never forget it, right? So it's a funky name. Nice. And everybody asks us, why do you talk about the community all the time? Why do you talk about this and this and this and this and this? And I'm like, because when you buy a piece of property, you're buying the community. You need to know who your community is, because that's where you're living. So it's not about, rates are this today and this is what's happening in this market and everything. No, it's about the community. And we have a lot. Yes, we talk a little bit about that, but most of it's about everything else. And we've done really well that they want us to go 5 days a week. I just don't know if I want to do that commitment.
Right. That's a big one. No, for sure. To go, 5 days is a huge commitment. I mean, anyone that is in the podcasting realm or hosting, all the work that's involved, whether it's, getting guests and setting up and planning of all, it's a big job. So, I mean, editing, absolutely, all of it. It all is. It totally
Editing's
is.
The worst, man. I mean, we had Helping the Brave. We did, and we learned to do it live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, right? And then it's on YouTube. We don't have to do it. Well, then I finally, after we had 55 episodes, finally goes, we have to get this out on a podcast so other people can see it, because not everybody does the YouTube. All right, so that's how old I am. And so I hired a guy locally that used to work for the radio station that was laid off after COVID. And he finally was able to come in, and he did all the editing. He's now I have somebody on staff that does all my editing. Nice. And and what a difference.
It makes a big difference. No, it does. It does. Look, and I love the work that you're doing, Ed, and I love how you're going about doing it. But more important, I like the reasoning behind it. Like it's real purpose to it. You use the word serving a couple times. Serving others, helping the brave, as your podcast is entitled. And I think that motivation from that standpoint, that's the best place to operate from.
Well, I totally agree. My wife asked me the other day, "Why are you doing all this stuff?" I'm like, because I enjoy it. Right. And that's it. I mean, because I run a mortgage company. So that means I got to produce mortgages, do my own, and I originate. I don't just have a bunch of people work underneath me, and I originate still. So I have to do my numbers. I don't have a lot of loan officers because that's not how our model works. Yep. And it's important for me to do it all because, who knows how long we're going to be here. And, you need to give back. My grandfather was already gone. My dad was gone by now. My mom, everybody I know is. So I never thought I'd be this old as I am now. I thought I'd be gone before now. Now that I'm here, I guess I got to do more and give back more since I've been here. So there's some reason I'm still here, and I think it's this.
Yeah, clearly it's your purpose, Ed. This is what you're supposed to be doing, and the fact that you've stepped into that is good on you, because sometimes, again, and it goes back to that, people not wanting to feel uncomfortable, so they don't do that, or they think it's not right for them, or that they're not meant to, or they're not good enough to do it. But there is some value in stepping into that place of uncomfortability because of not only the benefits for yourself, but how you can impact other people, and you're living proof of that, clearly.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Such kind words. I'm used to people yelling at me.
No, again, I hear it loud and clear, and I love it. I love again, the big part around it is the serving aspect of what you do, and making a difference in your way, and the fact that you're using real estate too is also real. It's I would say an unconventional way, if you will, of serving. People don't necessarily view it that way. They see it as, hey, let's sell mortgages, right? But
right.
You clearly are looking to, and I love the term you use, that this is the biggest debt you're going to put in people's lives, right?
It's true.
So make it something worthwhile for them, right?
Right, and that's why I say, and I tag, by the way, it's trademarked, building personal wealth through home ownership, because that's what that's why you do. I mean, years ago, people would buy a house for tax purposes, right? That all changed when the tax code changed, and you get a certain dollar amount per individual. So most people don't deduct the tax, the interest, the taxes, all the stuff on their house. They get a standard deduction. So the only reason to do it is to build personal wealth, which is the real reason to do it, not any other reason. Because and the other thing is, you can control your life once you own it, meaning that your payment won't adjust. But with rent in our area, it's crazy. Right. I mean, you look at rent from where it is, 10 years ago to where it is now, where it's so huge difference. Yeah. And it's going to continue to go up because there's no control. It's just the market. But if you buy a piece of property and you lock in the interest rate and you lock in a 30-year loan, that's your payment unless you change something.
Right. And that's important. Man, this has been great. I really, man, I've so appreciated the dialogue here. And again, I think your messaging, and I love the reasoning behind it. I mentioned before, but again, I love the it's not just here to make money or anything. It's large. It's a larger mission than that. And when you can empower people the way you do, and that's exactly what you're doing by getting them into home ownership. You're setting themselves up not only for them, but their generations to come potentially. And so that's impactful in a major way.
Yeah, I figured that out when I was like 27 years old, right? I had got out of the Navy. I was doing the mortgage industry, and I was building this company with this guy who was kind of a jerk. That's a totally different story. But I was driving out my so you don't know this. There's a place in San Diego called Rancho Santa Fe. It's when I was there in the 90s. It was before all the stars moved there, but they started moving there. So I'm driving out my gated community in my 500 SL, 27 years old, thinking I'm everything. And then I realized Talking Heads had a song at the time, said, "This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife." I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm just killing myself making all this money, but I'm not happy. Right. And I ended up selling everything and moving back to like Oceanside, which is right next to Camp Pendleton, and restarting over and re-looking at everything. And then I got divorced and we'll move on from there. But yeah. And then finally, after years, you finally figure out where you want to go in life, what you want to do. Yeah. I didn't have somebody helping me, right? My dad was gone at 12. My mom really didn't know much. And I didn't have those support structures. I had my grandfather, who was a dairyman, and he was a smart guy, but he was more of a, hands-on guy. So for me, I learned early on in life that you have to work hard at things. You have to help people and you will be helped. And that's why I do everything I do ever since then, because it's not about the money. Money's great, but it doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
You can buy a lot of stuff, but it doesn't make you happy.
Well, and that's exactly, and for a long time, people are sort of chasing this dream and what they think will make them happy. And then when they get there, they're like, nah, this wasn't it. And so for you to be where you're at, to know what it is, and to be able to live that dream too. So it's one thing to say, this is what I want, but to actually put it in practice and live it out. That's, I mean, you can't say enough about that.
No, and it's hard. I mean, and then the things that I'm connected with now through Steve and his speakeasy and those things, and they keep asking me, why do I keep coming back? And unfortunately, I don't tell them it's because of their people they have on stage. I tell them it's because of the people in the audience I connect with. Everybody in the audience could be on stage, right? And some of them are. But then they have people come on stage that are really amazing. But I mean, you get 40 people in a room for a couple of days, you get to know each other, and then you see, and you make these relationships that help build everybody, and you're here to help everybody. And that's what it's about. So, yeah.
Awesome. I think it's a great note to close on, Ed. This is just so awesome. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story and sort of, your vision and way, how you've gone about doing things. Because I very much agree with what you've done, and I agree with how you've gone about doing it and your rationale behind that as well. And really going back to being a service to others. For our listeners who want to learn more about you and your work and your podcast and your shows, where can we send them, Ed?
They just got to go to edparcaut.com. So EDPARCAUT.com.
Awesome. Well, look, Ed, I appreciate this. Thanks for joining me here on the Audacious Living Podcast, and all the best, my friend.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Back we are here on the podcast, and it was great to chat with Ed and hear his story of what giving looks like from the perspective of a former Navy vet, and then to also hear how he's helping everyday people achieve wealth through home ownership is just simply wonderful. So congratulations on all the work you're doing, Ed. It really is a great story and a wonderful way to live a life of service. When I reflect on my conversation with Ed, he really left us with a lot of great points. But if there's just one thing that I take from my conversation with him, it would be this. When you consciously decide to be of service to others, whether it be a group or a cause or belief, you're making the decision to do so without the expectation of wanting anything in return. It really is the truest definition of what service is. Oftentimes, the intrinsic benefits that are typically associated with giving to others is enough for most people. Or in other cases, the satisfaction in the fact that alignment exists with the things that matter to them. Look, it's my belief that we can't truly be of service to something unless it aligns with our own personal values. And it's that alignment that allows us to freely and openly give because it feels like the right thing to do. For anyone to have any true fulfillment, we must always be willing to continue to evolve, grow, and develop. But we must also be willing to make it more than just about ourselves. That's where the true audaciousness lies. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. All you've got to do is enter in your email address and you'll be alerted every time we've got brand new content that comes out. We've sadly reached the end of another episode of the Audacious Living Podcast. And as always, I send my thanks and appreciation to our amazing listeners, you lovers of audaciousness, and the support that you provide this podcast is fantastic. So I thank you and again send my deep appreciation. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Autley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.